thank you to all of you who are listening and watching today. I'm speaking to you from a very windy London. You might hear the wind blowing down the chimney at any moment, so apologies for that. I was really very touched. This is almost like a relay race, really. Then the incomparable Ben Okri talking about I Can't Breathe, about George Floyd, about Black Lives Mattering. Um, and if you look at the news here in the UK, it would seem to be really quite fixated on statues of great white men who have lived in the past. And a microscope is now being applied to episodes in history. Colonialism. How do we teach it? How do we learn about it? What do we do with the people who represented it? I know one thing. We have to know about the things that happened. And I'm going to give you one glimpse of one day in colonial India on a day when Black lives did not matter at all. So let me tell you the city that we're talking about. It is a city in the north of India called Amritsar. And most of you will have heard of it. And you may have heard of it because of this building here, the Golden Temple. Amritsar was the home of the most holy shrine to the Sikhs. This date is in 1919. So a time when Indian soldiers had come back from fighting in a foreign war, a war where they were told that they were fighting for king and country, a war where they were told that they weren't men unless they stood up for the empire. And so they went and they fought, and many died in foreign fields and were buried in foreign soil. And the weeping of their widows and mothers swept across oceans and would never reach them. But they went to fight, even though they didn't understand the languages and the countries that they went to fight. These are some soldiers walking through France, but they went to fight. And they came back having been promised land, riches, recognition, gratitude, that if they fought for king and country, then this king and country may reward them, give them more of a say in the way that their country was run and how their lives would be. But they didn't come back to that at all. They came back to even more draconian laws, laws which put them in prison for speaking out against the Raj. Anything written might have been, we say Ben was talking about words and Eleanor was talking about words mattering. You could have just written criticism about the Raj in a newspaper and you would be thrown into jail for sedition, no trial, not even knowing what you're charged with. Hard labor. And so the north of India, this part, the city of Amritsar in the north, was restive and had been restive for many days. Gandhi was trying to keep it calm. He was trying to say that non-violent, passive resistance was the way forward. But this was a place that was bubbling with resentment. There are two leaders who are in this city of Amritsar who are holding down the peace, two Indians called Satyapal and Kichlu, Gandhians. But they are getting such traction, such power, such enormous support from the natives that this man here, a man called Sir Michael O'Dwyer, cannot bear it. He's the Lieutenant Governor of India, and he hates these educated Indians, these upstarts who are arguing for some kind of say, because he does believe that there is a racial hierarchy and people like him are at the top and people like the Indians, well, they're right at the bottom. So he decides to have these two Gandhian leaders arrested. And what happens is Amritsar bursts into anger and rage. People think that these men have been arrested, that they're going to be hanged by morning. What will become of them? There are 2 days of immense violence in the city of Amritsar as they demand to have their people back. On April the 10th, this man is dispatched to Amritsar. April the 10th, 1919. His name is Rex Dyer. He's a brigadier general. He's never been to this city before, and he decides he's going to show them who is boss. He's disgusted with the fact that these natives don't salam their betters when they pass, when the Brits pass in the street. He has them dragged to one side and taught a lesson. He sends a drum proclamation out. He arrives hot and dusty on the 10th, sends out a proclamation the next day saying if anybody gathers in groups or has political speeches, they will be guilty of sedition and they could be shot. Curfews are brought in. But this is delivered by drum proclamation. So Amritsar, a very noisy city, it's not easy to get the word out. But he's done enough, he thinks. April the 13th is the important day of this story and the day where this whole story of the patient assassin is underpinned. It's Vaisakhi, it's the biggest festival in the north of India. Thousands of people from all over Punjab pour into this city. It's the harvest festival to give thanks at the Golden Temple. On this day, a political meeting is to be held by Gandhian supporters, so people who believe in non-violent resistance, and they choose this place that you can see, Jallianwala Bagh. It means the Garden of Jala, and to call it a garden is a mistake. It's a picture from 1919. It's more like scrubland, a very narrow entrance. Three men side by side would be hard pushed to get in, unless they broke rank and went in behind each other. But this is where the political meeting is going to be held, and Rex Dyer decides this is where he's going to make his stand and show the Indians just who is boss. He drives two armoured vehicles to this narrow entrance, 50 riflemen who are running behind him, Balochis and Gurkhas armed with rifles. Inside this place are 20,000 people. Men, women, and children, innocent civilians. Some, sure, are there for the political meeting. Some are there just to get away from the maelstrom that is Amritsar. They've gone to the Golden Temple. They're looking for somewhere to sit down and have a picnic. Why do I know that? Well, one of the reasons I know that is because my grandfather was there that day. A 19-year-old gangling youth with not a political bone in his body. So they're sitting, they're picnicking. Rex Dyer orders his men to go in. He orders them to take positions on this northern bank of the garden. People start scrabbling together, trying to get their things together. Surely these men are going to give some kind of order. They're going to tell us to leave. They're going to tell us to go. No order is given. The only voice that is heard is Rex Dyer's voice saying, fire. And his men fire, and fire, and fire, and fire. 1,650 bullets, and fire. People are running, screaming. They can't get out. There's only this one narrow entrance, and fire. 1,650 bullets. People go to the walls. They try and scrabble over. They can't get over. And fire. One bullet can go through 3 people at a time. There are a mass of people hiding behind this one scrubby tree in the middle of the garden. There's splinters and gobbets of blood flying everywhere. And fire. He fires for 10 sustained minutes. That must feel like a lifetime to these people. And then, as soon as he comes, he leaves. Doesn't allow any medical help to come in, doesn't let people take their bodies of loved ones out, and wailing sweeps across the city. The curfew means that there is a night of horror for everybody who is in that garden, and they are forced to hear the screaming of the wounded turn to wailing, to whimpering, and then to silence. And there is a legend that an orphan, a similar age to my grandfather, is there until morning. And when the first light hits the earth, he picks up a clod of earth, rubs it against his head, and says, no matter how long it takes, no matter where it takes me, I'm going to find the men who did this, and I am going to kill them with as little mercy as they've shown my people. This is him, Udham Singh, the orphan of Amritsar, who's been saved by the city, brought up in an orphanage in this city. And he then embarks, as Eleanor quite rightly said, on a 20-year vendetta to try and become someone who can kill men this powerful. He is illiterate, he is the poorest of the poor, he is low caste, and nobody takes him seriously in India. So he travels around the world following the adage, my enemy's enemy is my friend. He goes to Africa and gets involved with anti-colonialists who hate the British as much as him. He goes to America and falls in with the Ghadar movement, where they train him how to change his appearance, change his face, forge documents, get hold of money. He travels to Russia. He falls in with the Bolsheviks, all because this man and the next man must die. They must die with as little mercy as they have shown his people. I go into a lot of detail in the book about how this humble man transforms himself into this chap, who in 1945, on March the 13th, has the guts to walk into a hall in Westminster, in the very heart of this city that I live in, a stone's throw. In fact, actually, let me be more accurate. Caxton Hall, where he decides to make his move, is as far away from the Houses of Parliament as Jallianwala Bagh is from the Golden Temple. There's a meeting of the great and good of the Raj. Udham Singh, who has now changed his name because words matter, to Muhammad Singh Azad, a Muslim name, a Sikh name, Azad meaning freedom, stands at the back of the hall, bides his time, walks to the front, and opens fire on that man, Sir Michael O'Dwyer. He fires 2 bullets straight through his heart. They travel at a near perfect parallel trajectory, and he leaves him to bleed on the floor, just as so many of his countrymen bled to death so many years before. Thank you.